In case you haven't noticed, Miguel is an asshole.
Can't stop me now!
You can't run forever, kid!
I can't lose one more friend.
Miguel, this isn't what we talked about! You knew? I have no idea what you're doing!
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
All stations, stop Spider-Man!
So, I'm sure you've seen him all over the place on TikTok and YouTube because people fucking love the guy. Like, come on gal, your daddy issues are showing. As far as I can tell, he's only slightly behind the GOAT Hobie Brown in terms of popularity, but Hobie actually deserves it. Of course he does. He was a homie to Miles like 20 minutes after meeting him. What a guy. Miguel isn't a good person. He is a person that does what he needs to do for the greater good. He is the sacrifice one person for the world to Peter B. Parker's sacrifice the world for one person. His philosophy completely runs counter to everything Miles and Peter believe in. They will save everyone, but Miguel will only see the easiest way out to save the world, even sacrificing himself. So, he's introduced as this insanely cool but slightly morally grey guy who has a thing for flair, and I can respect that. But then we realize quickly that he's just kind of like depressed. This becomes integral to my point later on. He kind of feels like a kid that's just trying to not let his dad make him laugh after his dad just annoyed him. Or like Batman. He is Batman. He really is Batman.
I'm Batman.
And then we find out that his own family in his world died. He proceeded to take over a dead Miguel's family and subsequently destroyed that world. So I suppose him being kind of depressed and nihilistic is a fair reaction, seeing as how badly he's been traumatized. Miguel really needs to go see Spider Therapist. Question 1 you might have, why won't the Spot be the final villain? So, in case you don't know, the Spot has been around in Spider-Man's lore for decades. He began as this really menacing goofball that could legitimately be a big threat, but over the years he got reduced to kind of a henchman character that was always in the background of villain congregation. So you might be thinking that Across the Spiderverse choosing to use him as a primary antagonist seems like a bit of a bold choice in a movie so full of Easter eggs. Might I be correct on that one? But that's actually what makes him brilliant. They can choose to do pretty much anything with his character and it won't be breaking what we already know about him since we barely know anything. He's a goofball with a victim complex, yes, but they can choose to make him an extremely powerful and menacing villain too. However, that's also part of the reason why I don't think he will be the final villain. The Spot isn't well known, so while this makes for a great flexible villain, it also makes it hard for any pre-established hype to be built around the character, and in a movie that has a lot of the hype built up by the Easter eggs and random throw-ins, you might think they'd have a villain that people already know and love. And while these Easter eggs aren't integral to the plot, they build so much hype around the movie and make it so much more enjoyable for pre-existing Spider-Man fans. Now, I also believe that the Spot will have nothing to do with Miles' character growth during the movie. Anytime we see Miles face the Spot in Across the Spider-Verse, Miles was never grappling with any emotional distress to do with facing the Spot. He knows that he didn't necessarily create the Spot, he's not grappling with that, and that the Spot just had the wrong idea about the whole situation. The Spot is an obstacle to Miles, a physical barrier, not an emotional one. So, question 2 you might have, why will Miguel be the true villain instead? Now, I'm not saying Miguel is lying about the canon, but I believe his perception of what the canon is seems to be a bit off. But to understand how he's off, you gotta understand why he thinks the way he thinks. Miguel is a broken man. He lost his real family, and then it became his fault that his fake family died. Miguel was absolutely ridden with guilt, and he believes it to be his own fault that his family died, so to combat the guilt, he then decided to go start exploring the multiverse and find the reason why his fake family collapsed. Now, this is headcanon on my part, but I'm sure that when he started studying the reason the universe collapsed, he ran into many other Spider-Men and many misplaced villains that he had to send back. Through meeting these other Spider-Men, I believe he saw the Spider-Man story and saw the patterns that each Spider-Man story had. So what makes him wrong, you may ask? There are 2 ways that I believe he could be wrong. I'm starting to sound like fucking Attack on Titan with all these parts. The first way is that he could be completely wrong about what triggers a canon event, and subsequently the universe to be destroyed. In the world he destroyed, there was no Spider-Man. The Spider-Man story was over. So, how could he interfere with the Spider-Verse? He couldn't. Him interfering with the Spider-Man story did not cause that world to implode. And it couldn't have been his mere presence because the Universe 42 spider didn't destroy Miles' world. It may have glitched a few times, but nothing bad actually happened from it. I'm not quite sure what could have caused the world to implode, but if my theory is correct, then Miguel is wrong about what forms the canon and what destroys the world. However, I'm not quite sure about that one, so let me move on to what I think is more plausible. So the theory that I personally believe in is that he is being too hyper-specific about what needs to be canon in a Spider-Man story. Of course, there are some things that you can't change no matter what, like actually getting the Spider-Man powers. Someone's probably going to prove me wrong about that in the comments, but you get what I mean. But Miguel states that a close police captain has to die as part of the story. I don't believe this to be true. During the showcase of the Spider-Verse, we see Gwen's canon death to be her friend Peter, and Miles' canon death to be his uncle Aaron. Neither of these were police captains, but they both had a radical change on each of their respective Spider-Man stories. Due to this, I don't think that Miles' dad actually has to die. It doesn't have to be a police captain. It just is a police captain in most cases. These deaths can act as the catalyst for Spider-Man's growth without needing to be a police captain. Also, take a look at Gwen's dad. Her dad stepped down from the police captain some time before she returned to her world, and her world didn't implode. And it isn't a matter of timing either, because we saw Spider-Man India's world go haywire almost immediately after the canon event was disrupted. Miguel is almost certainly right about a canon existing, but I'm not sure how right he actually is. Now back onto answer number 1. He's a philosophical foil to Miles rather than a physical one. Now we all know the most important battle in media is generally not the physical one, it's the mental one. Writers usually use action and violence as a way to portray mental growth and steps towards goals, not as the problem itself. Miguel's idea of sacrificing one person for the world runs completely counter to everything the Spider-Man character usually is. Spider-Man is usually a character that would try their hardest to save everyone involved, leaving no one behind, as shown by Spider-Man India trying to save the bus and the police guy. Miles doesn't want to have to choose between saving the world or one person. He wants to save both. So, when Miguel tells him that he has to let his dad die, this is a fate Miguel's okay with because of who he is and the trauma he's experienced. But Miles hasn't experienced that, and he wants to fight back. Miguel fights Miles to stop him from saving his dad instead of letting him save everyone because Miguel is sure it will destroy that universe, which is pretty fair on his part considering his theory has been mostly right. But I believe that Miles in the end will show Miguel that he can save everyone and that this is what it means to truly be Spider-Man. So to wrap up, Miguel's not a good guy. He's pretty flawed, he has trauma, he needs a session with Spider Therapist. Also, I've no idea about Prowler Miles, that's someone else's job to dissect.